Hello, this is Monero from Underrated Hardware, and today I'm going to be testing the thermals and the power consumption of the Lattepanda Alpha. Okay, right now at the desktop, we're running about 41 degrees Celsius, and it's been sitting here idle right now, so it's not doing much. And normally after you've stressed it out a little bit and then let it sit, it'll be about 45. So this is our starting temperature. Our ambient temperature, this is Fahrenheit right here, it's 74.1 degrees. That's roughly about 24 degrees Celsius. And let's see, the board here is not powered, the fan is not powered on. The reason is because of the way the fan settings are right now. There's 3 settings in the BIOS. The highest one, highest temperature threshold starts the fan up at 80 degrees Celsius and stops at 70. The default one it comes set at is it starts at 70 and turns off the fan at 60. And the lowest threshold it starts at 60 and stops at 50 degrees Celsius. Now that whenever you get something going, it will kick on the fan if it's anything somewhat intensive, opening up a web browser, doing something enough to stress it out a little bit. So right now I have it set on, the fan will start at 60 degrees Celsius. This is the safest, I guess, temperature range I want to keep it in. So right now, okay, we're at 42 degrees Celsius, you see it just sitting there. Our CPUs aren't doing anything, and it says we're using about 1.1 watts from the CPU. Okay, now we're going to go check the power consumption at idle. Right now we have the kilowatt meter here, and this is at the desktop at idle. We use about 4 watts just sitting there. There's only a keyboard and a mouse plugged in. The Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth are on but aren't connected to anything. So this is basically our baseline. Now when it's in standby, it generally uses about 1 watt. And the highest amount of power it'll use during boot can be up to about 15 or so. It just depends. Now I'm going to be taking a laser thermometer and measuring the temperature on the PCB. Here I'm measuring the VRM here. It's 93 right now. It hasn't been under any load. It's about 80s to 90s. It's relatively cool. See, we're getting 91.8. Now if I get it doing something, everything will heat up quite a bit. The highest temperatures I've seen get up to about 103 for the underside of the board, right underneath the CPU, and the VRM on the top, which is actually over here, sort of underneath the cooler, gets up to about like 120 or so. But since VRMs run at high temperatures anyways, they're fine. They don't need quite as much cooling. But this entire board does get quite warm, especially when under load. So cooling might be an issue. The first generation one, I have the box over there. I have it underneath the table right now. The first generation one doesn't get quite near as hot, and generally uses that amount of power when under a little bit of load. So this thing idles at a few less watts, but when it gets under load, it would use a lot more power and puts out a lot more heat. Like the other one, like you wouldn't be able to feel too much, but even just feeling around the board, you can feel a little tiny bit of ambient heat. Okay, now we're going to be running Prime 95. I'm going to tell it to put out the maximum heat and stress out a lot of stuff. So we'll take a look over here at the temperatures. So right now we're about 44. I'm going to run this and just watch the temperature spike up. You're going to hear the fan probably kick on a bit, maybe. Okay, we're at 68, 71, 73, 74. The fan is now online, 76, 77, 78. And it heats up rather quickly. Of course, this is under maximum heat stress test. We're at 79 right now, 80. This is starting to get up pretty toasty. Now, see, it's dropping back down because the fan's starting to kick in. So now it's at 65. We're just going to leave it here a little bit. Now right now, looks like we're at our package power consumption for our total CPU is using about 7 watts. That's about what's supposed to be. Now we're getting about 64 to 65 degrees Celsius. This is under load, so the fan seems to be doing okay. And we got the CPUs pegged, and looks like there's no errors I can see. And I'm gonna zoom into it here a little bit and see if we can hear the fan. You probably won't hear it. It makes a little bit of noise, and not too much, but it definitely is noticeable. Okay, we're quitting Prime 95, stopping it. So it's about 65 under load. That's pretty good for considering the thermal solution is relatively small. See, the fan already turned off, so it's able to keep it cool relatively easily. So that's a good thing. But remember, the rest of the board does get quite warm. So if I go take some more measurements on the board after it's been under load, it should be a bit hotter. You know, it's give me a second to go. So actually, we're in about the 90s right now. It's not too bad. Okay, yeah, we're doing, and it's doing okay right now. Now, if I have it under load for any amount of time, especially lots of tabs and stuff open, a lot of the board does get quite warm. So I think this fan is adequate, and it seems to do its job. Maybe in a later video we'll put in an aftermarket heatsink and fan, but for now it should do its purpose okay. Okay, this is running Prime 95. It should be running. We're running at 12 watts. Okay. Yeah, it's going. 12 watts. It peaks at 19 or 20 watts, so I guess it went down a little bit. So it seems to be doing steady at it. I'm going to stop Prime 95 and see what the load does. This is just with a keyboard and mouse. Okay, stop Prime 95. Okay. Let's get stopped here. Okay, we have Prime 95 running now in maximum power consumption. It briefly went up to 21 watts, now it's at 13. So, I mean, there's not much plugged into the board, so that's not bad. The power brick stays plenty cool, so, and it's got plenty of enough juice to run some peripherals. I don't know how well it would handle like an external hard drive, but it should do that okay. So we're using about 13 watts right here. I don't know how well you can see that. Okay, let's go up here and try to run some other tests. Okay, now I'm just running a Minecraft Windows 10 here just to see what the power consumption is. Obviously the CPU isn't fully maxed out, and the GPU is only being used about 75%. So this is on the aquatic update here, or the latest one we have right now. We're running at the render distance, I think it's at 16 with all the fancy settings on. Here I can show you what we're running for video. We got all the view bobbing on, fancy leaves, everything's up beautiful, and we're running at 16 chunks. And here's our particle render distance and everything else. And so our power consumption, this is more stressing out the integrated graphics than anything. We're pulling about 15 watts right now. So that's not terrible considering what we're doing here. I mean, it's getting about 60 FPS. I don't know if the camera can see that, but it is getting a solid 60 FPS. I'd have to go see exactly what frame rate it's getting. Okay, I'm running the Minecraft Java edition here. It's more on CPU intensive than the graphics. It's a little bit jittery here because I just rendered it a little bit ago. So our frame rate right now is roughly 50 FPS, about 60 FPS. I just limited to that because anything past that it'll get a little bit more, but then it'll start getting a bit laggy. Now I do have the graphics set to the fast preset, just because it doesn't do as well. Let's see our video settings. Render distance at 12 chunks. We're at 1080p here. Everything else is pretty much just regular. Nothing crazy. Just the graphics on fast and limiting the frame rate. And it does great. Now when connected to servers, it gets a solid 60 no matter what. So it does do pretty good. Right now our power consumption is about 13 to 15 watts. So we're using the CPU some. This is just for the keyboard mouse. And the thermals on the board appear to be pretty good. Let's escape this. Check a hardware monitor. We're about 65 degrees Celsius. So obviously the CPU is stressed out enough. 65 is about your upper limit, which is not bad really when you're considering. See, now the temperatures are starting to go down. Okay, now, well, thanks for watching, everybody. If you would like, you can subscribe to this channel. We're going to be on break from school this week, and so we're going to be able to get lots of videos uploaded later. And we're going to be testing out some games with integrated graphics, such as Star Trek Online, and possibly War Thunder, and maybe some other free games we can find. Well, see you next time on Underrated Hardware.